Yes, believe it or not, I have never watched this one before. I have heard about it, I've heard people talk about it, and I've seen little bits and pieces of it here and there. But I've never watched the whole thing in full until now. And while I do think it is a little bit overrated, I think this movie is still really, really good. Why do I think it's overrated? A few problems. But we have a long plot summary, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. What's up? What's happening? What's going on? Welcome back to the Animation Station. This is anything, everything animation. Welcome back to Disney-Vember. Welcome to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Arguably the most adult and dark movie Disney has ever done outside of Black Cauldron. Like, this movie, even for a kid's movie, it's pretty freaking intense. Excuse me. It's pretty intense. How intense? Well, listen to this plot summary, which should tell you all about it. The movie opens in 15th century Paris with Clopin, a gypsy puppeteer, telling a group of children the story of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Or Notre Dame, as I called it in the last video for whatever reason. The story begins in 1462 as three gypsies sneak illegally into Paris but are ambushed by a squadron of soldiers working for Judge Claude Frollo, the minister of judge and de facto ruler of Paris. A gypsy woman attempts to flee with her baby, but Frollo, thinking the woman's carrying stolen goods, chases her. She manages to escape him and arrive at Notre Dame. She pounds on the door begging for sanctuary, but Frollo catches up to her and kills her just outside by kicking her head against the stairs. He soon learns that the stolen goods was her son, who is deformed. He spots a nearby well, intending to kill the baby. Frollo says to the archdeacon that the baby is an unholy demon and that he is sending it back to hell where it belongs. Yeah, baby murder. Charming. Frollo denies that he is in the wrong, saying his conscience is clear, but the archdeacon declares he can lie to himself all he wants, but he cannot hide his crime from heaven, the eyes of Notre Dame, the statues of the saints outside the cathedral. Fearing for his soul and to atone for his sin, Frollo reluctantly agrees to raise the deformed child in the cathedral's bell tower as his son, naming him Quasimodo. He notes that someday the child may have some use for him. 20 years later, in 1482, Quasimodo has developed into a kind yet isolated young man with three gargoyles, Victor, Hugo, and Laverne, as his only company as well as the pigeons. Is constantly told by Frollo that he is a monster who would be rejected by the uncaring outside world. Yeah, I'm just going to get this out of the way right now. This is one of the movie's biggest problems right off the bat. The three freaking gargoyles. It is forced comedic relief. They are terrible freaking characters. They are annoying every single freaking second they're on screen. And instead of being some nice needed comedic levity from all the darkness of everything going on around them, instead they stick out like a sore thumb, and it's the parts of the movie that you wish you could just find that either a mute button or a fast forward button and absolutely press that thing. Because my goodness, the comedic relief gargoyles are the worst part of this movie. By far. They are just as terrible as you've heard, if not even more so. No offense to the voice actors, they do a decent job of what they have, but the characters themselves are terrible, and they belong in a much different movie. Instead of being relief, they're just nothing more than a freaking distraction. Every year, though, Quasimodo looks forward to seeing the Festival of Fools. However, this year he isn't excited about watching it as he never goes there. Quasimodo's friends insist he go as he loves the festival and will have fun. Quasimodo reminds them he can't leave the tower because of Frollo, who cannot stand the event himself. After some prompting, Quasimodo almost leaves, but Frollo has arrived to see him. While reviewing the alphabet, Quasimodo accidentally lets the term festival slip. He tries to change his answer to forgiveness. And Frollo becomes angry that Quasimodo wants to go to the festival. He expresses that Frollo goes every year and he should too. Frollo explains he goes because he is a public official despite hating every second of it. He reminds Quasimodo that nobody would like him because of his appearance and how, after his mother abandoned him, he would have been treated poorly had Frollo not taken him in. Before leaving, Frollo reminds Quasimodo that the bell tower is his only safe haven. Despite these warnings, Quasimodo still wishes to see the city and plans to sneak out of the cathedral to attend the Feast of Fools. Meanwhile, Captain Phoebus, hope I'm pronouncing that right, excuse me, who has been away at war, has returned to Paris to serve as Frollo's new captain of the guards. He manages to save a gypsy dancer named Esmeralda, who is accused of stealing money which she rightfully earned for dancing. Also, yeah, this is one of the only times that Disney will ever address sex in a movie. Like, it's not just hinted at. It's not just, implied. No. Here, it's almost flat out stated. Sex is real, and it is prevalent throughout this movie. No, you don't, see anything, but it's very much told through facial expressions or body language. Like I said, arguably the most adult movie Disney's ever done. Phoebus manages to humiliate brutish and oafish guards, both of whom afterwards escort the new captain to the Palace of Justice. There, Phoebus meets with Frollo, who, after hearing about his war record, expects Phoebus to be the best as his last captain was a disappointment. He was being tortured. Frollo explains that they are to stop the gypsies as he had been trying to get rid of them, but they managed to stay strong. Frollo has heard of their safe haven called the Court of Miracles and shows Phoebus that he intends to destroy it like the bugs under a stone. Yeah, Frollo is one sick, screwed up guy, if you haven't already been able to put that together. Phoebus sees the judge's point, and afterwards, the judge who must attend the Festival of Fools invites Phoebus to come along. While at the festival, Quasimodo tries to stay out of sight but accidentally falls into Esmeralda's tent. She helps him up and comments on his mask. After Frollo arrives, he and Phoebus watch Esmeralda, both of which become smitten with her dancing, Frollo especially. Again, they are really, they're not implying it, they're almost outright stating that this is all done for sex appeal. Yeah, it really widens your eyes and makes you tug at your collars when you learn that, doesn't it? Parents that let their kids watch this movie thinking it's just like every other Disney movie. The people this must have traumatized. At first, Quasimodo manages to stay out of sight of Frollo, at least until he is invited with others to be the crowned King of the Fools. But everyone is shocked at Quasimodo's face and Frollo cannot believe he's there. At first, Quasimodo is embarrassed, but Clopin points out they were looking for the ugliest face in the city and found it. Quasimodo is crowned and showered in joy and praises. Frollo, however, just glares at Quasimodo. The joy is short-lived, however, as immediately after the song, he is humiliated by the crowd when Frollo's soldiers start a riot. Frollo, refusing to help Quasimodo, even holding back Phoebus' attempts to help, and the crowd only stops when a kind Esmeralda frees Quasimodo from his restraints and openly defies Frollo. She then throws the crown at Frollo, deeming him to be the biggest fool. The judge immediately orders her arrest, but she escapes by means of illusions, which Frollo refers to as witchcraft, and assistance from the performers. After disappearing, two soldiers manage to knock down Frollo's tent, humiliating and angering him. Frollo then confronts Quasimodo and sends him back inside the cathedral and orders Phoebus to bring Esmeralda back to him alive. Esmeralda follows Quasimodo to find him, but she herself is followed by Phoebus, who himself has fallen for Esmeralda. Yeah, we have a love triangle going on here. The two engage in combat after she beats him. Phoebus states he refuses to arrest her inside the cathedral. After the two are introduced, Frollo comes inside and orders Phoebus to arrest her. Phoebus covers for her, saying that she has claimed sanctuary and thus cannot be arrested as long as she remains in Notre Dame. Frollo finally leaves, or at least pretends to, when the Archdeacon intervenes, but not before groping Esmeralda's arm. Yeah, fill in the blanks. I feel like if I say it again, I'm gonna end up getting flagged. He tells her he's patient and she won't last long inside. He then sniffs her hair, claiming to imagine her with the noose, but she knows what he is thinking. Frollo is impressed with her wit, and that is typical of all gypsies to give people unholy thoughts. He leaves, but not before warning Esmeralda that his men will capture her the moment she attempts to escape the cathedral. Esmeralda cannot stand Frollo, but the Archdeacon advises her to not anger Frollo any further. She then voices her frustration on the fact that not one person from the crowd helped Quasimodo because he's different. He tells her that not all the wrongs of the world can be fixed easily, but maybe someone else will help. After watching everyone praying, Esmeralda expresses through song a prayer for all of those suffering. Afterwards, she finds Quasimodo in the bell tower, who heard her sing, and befriends him. Since Esmeralda is his first company, Quasimodo shows her around his home, including his wooden city, the gargoyles, the bells, all of which he named, and the view from the top of the tower. He even invites her stay, but she states that she cannot. He then states that she is nothing like the Romani Frollo told him about. She asks why a cool man like Frollo wastes a sweet man like Quasimodo. He tells her Frollo took him in when no one else would because of his appearance. After some palm reading, because she's also psychic, she sees that he is no monster at all, only a misunderstood soul. When asking if she is evil, he says no and that she is kind to him. As gratitude for helping him in the crowd, Quasimodo helps Esmeralda escape Notre Dame. In return, Esmeralda invites him to leave Notre Dame with her, but he declines because of what happened that day and says that the cathedral is his home. So Esmeralda says she'll come to visit him. Quasimodo is nervous about the idea, but after a kiss, changes his mind. Before leaving, she gives him a map to the Romani hideout, the Court of Miracles, should he ever choose to leave Notre Dame again. After making it back up the tower, Phoebus is there and asks to see Esmeralda. Quasimodo is angry to see a guard searching his tower and demands that he leaves. Phoebus explains that he is sorry for trapping her here. He only wanted to keep her from being harmed. Before leaving, Phoebus tells Quasimodo to tell Esmeralda she is lucky to have a friend like him. Back at the tower, the three gargoyles comment on how well he and Esmeralda are together. Blech. At first, Quasimodo thinks there's no hope with his appearance, but soon believes that if one person can love him for who he is, then he may have found true happiness. Frollo himself begins to realize his lustful feelings for Esmeralda and wishes to be free of them to escape eternal damnation in hell. He soon learns of Esmeralda's escape and instigates a citywide manhunt for her, so she will be given the chance to be his or die. The next morning, an unrested Frollo begins to search for Esmeralda with Phoebus. They track down the Romani, being hidden throughout the city, and even after offering them pieces of silver for information on Esmeralda, no one gives her away, so Frollo has them all locked up. Realizing that Frollo has lost his mind when he traps a miller and his family in their house to kill them, Phoebus politely refuses to kill them as he was not trained to do this, but is told that he was trained to follow orders. Regardless, Phoebus defies the judge by saving an innocent family, as Frollo orders him executed for treason, but is assisted in escape by Esmeralda. After being hit by an arrow, Phoebus falls into the Seine River and is left for dead by Frollo. He's rescued by Esmeralda, who takes him to Quasimodo for refuge. Frollo has started to burn Paris to the ground. Yeah. To find Esmeralda soon returns to the cathedral, wondering how she escaped the guards. Meanwhile, the four friends look down the city being burned and feel terrible for everybody. Soon Victor, Hugo, and Laverne encourage Quasimodo to tell Esmeralda how he feels, as he has much to offer. However, Phoebus and Esmeralda have fallen for each other after she tends to him. Soon Frollo comes to visit Quasimodo. Before she leaves, he promises to take care of Phoebus, but with Frollo approaching, this forces Quasimodo to hide him. After Frollo arrives, Quasimodo says he thought Frollo wouldn't be coming, but he tells the bell ringer he always has times to see him. While having some grapes together, Frollo hints that he knows Quasimodo is hiding something, but he keeps calm and tries to show nothing is wrong. Discovering the wooden figure of Esmeralda that Quasimodo made, Frollo says he knows he helped Esmeralda escape and loses his temper at Quasimodo, saying that Paris is burning and that she is a gypsy who is incapable of love. Pretty much saying she's nothing more than a sex object. He clutches Quasimodo by the shirt, but stops to recompose himself, as he thinks Quasimodo is under her spell and they'll be free from her. As he leaves, the judge bluffs that he knows where the Court of Miracles is and intends to attack it at dawn with a battalion. After he leaves, Phoebus requests Quasimodo's help in finding the court before Frollo. At first, Quasimodo won't go because of his jealousy, which he doesn't make known, but also because he cannot disobey Frollo again. Phoebus is disappointed with Quasimodo's gratitude to Esmeralda after she saved him yesterday. Phoebus leaves but tells Quasimodo he can come or not. The gargoyles are also unimpressed with Quasimodo. Just shut up. You're in the wrong movie. He states he can't save her because he knows everyone won't immediately hail him as a hero, and Esmeralda now has her own knight in shining armor. However, knowing that she is trouble, he agrees to join, but only for Esmeralda's sake. Using the map she left behind, the two find the Court of Miracles and are almost hung by Clopin for being spies, which they fail to explain. But they are saved when Esmeralda intervenes and clears up the misunderstanding. Phoebus tries to get the court to retreat as Frollo plans to invade at dawn. Esmeralda advises that they leave right away and everyone starts to pack. Esmeralda thanks Phoebus for telling them, even though it was risky, but Phoebus tells her Quasimodo is to thank. Suddenly Frollo's army appears and captures all of them, with the judge revealing that he followed Phoebus and Quasimodo. He gloats about Quasimodo being useful at last and finding Esmeralda. He is also impressed at Phoebus being alive and will remedy it. He tells the gypsies there will be a bonfire tomorrow and everyone is invited to witness it. He has everyone locked up. Quasimodo pleads with his master to stop, but Frollo won't have it. He has his soldiers take Quasimodo back to the bell tower and to stay there. At dawn, Frollo reads Esmeralda's crime of witchcraft and to be burned as her death sentence. He tries to ask her again to be his lover or she will burn. She spits in Frollo's face, refusing his proposal of her becoming his mistress. He then orders Esmeralda to be burned at the stake. Yeah, dark. Up in the bell tower, the gargoyles try to free Quasimodo, telling him not to give up, but he won't have it. They stop helping, but tell him he is stronger than stone. Frollo gets a torch and burns the wheat Esmeralda is standing on. She starts coughing, and then she goes unconscious. When Quasimodo sees Esmeralda in pain, he gives in to his anger and rescues her, bringing her to the cathedral and yelling "Sanctuary!" As Frollo grabs a sword and orders his men to attack the cathedral, Phoebus ignites a rebellion among the people of Paris who have had enough of Frollo's tyranny, and a battle ensues in the streets between the citizenry and Frollo's army. Quasimodo places Esmeralda's unconscious body on a bed, and after fighting back with wood, stone, bricks, and even kitchens, the team pours a cauldron of molten copper onto the streets to ensure nobody can get inside. Frollo, however, manages to break in and force his way past the Archdeacon. Quasimodo, believing Esmeralda to be dead, breaks down in tears beside her body as Frollo comes into the room to kill him with a dagger. Quasimodo, in fury, disarms his former guardian, which causes Frollo to actually show fear and tearfully tell Quasimodo. Tearfully, Quasimodo tells Frollo that people like him are the only reason the world is so dark and cruel. Esmeralda is actually alive and wakes up, and Quasimodo grabs her and flees. The deranged judge chases him onto a balcony where he attacks Quasimodo and Esmeralda with his sword. The battle ends with Frollo maniacally quoting the Bible, and him and Quasimodo both falling from the balcony. After Frollo falls to his death, as in he clutches to a gargoyle head that falls off the cathedral into the fire, pretty much signifying that he's literally falling and descending into the pits of hell. Again, dark, especially for a Disney movie. Quasimodo also falls, but is caught by Phoebus on a lower floor, and the three friends reunite. As the citizens celebrate their victory over Frollo, Quasimodo reluctantly emerges from the cathedral to face the populace again. Only this time a little girl approaches him and touches his face, and then embraces him. Clopin then cheers Quasimodo. He is hailed as a hero and finally accepted into society. Clopin tells everyone the riddle, what makes a monster and what makes a man. Quasimodo was the man, and Frollo was the monster. A brief post-credits scene shows Hugo enthusiastically wishing everyone a good night. Hardy har har. Yeah, that's the very lengthy story of Hunchback and Notre Dame. It is dark, it is adult, it is relentless, it is brutal, and it's freaking great. Like, the freaking gargoyles are the only problem with this story, and they feel like they don't even belong. But Outside of that, and a little too much back and forth with the love triangle crap, the rest of the story is great. I love how dark it is, I love how mature it is, and it does feel like a much more adult centered Disney movie rather than one aimed mainly at kids, which is actually nice to see for once, considering how much Disney nowadays is too freaking scared to pull stuff like this ever again. And Frollo is a villain so maniacal and demented he actually puts the last three we've looked at to shame. To shame pretty easily. Yes, the villain from Pocahontas, I already forget his name because I don't care, was weak, but then there was Jafar and Scar back to back, and I think Frollo bodies both of them. He is sick in the head, he's evil, he's demented, and he's driven pretty much by nothing but lust and a thirst for power. And when he loses his grip on power, he descends into madness. I mean, he literally almost kills a freaking baby in the first scene of the movie. If that doesn't get you to hate him, I don't know what will. And then we have the songs. And, not a fan of them, honestly. I feel like this is one of those Disney movies that honestly would have been better if they didn't have songs in there. But they're in there, so let's talk about them. Bells of Notre Dame is fine. Out There is fine. Topsy Turvy's fine. God Help the Outcast is fine. Heaven's Light is fine. Hellfire is the one great one I will always defend. A Guy Like You is fine. Heaven's Light is fine. Court of Miracles is okay. And then The Bells of Notre Dame is fine. And then Someday is fine. The songs are fine. Like, compared to the last three, outside of Hellfire, there's not really one that stands out all that much. They're not bad songs by any means. They're just not very memorable either. They kind of fall into that weird gray area where it's like, I don't hate when I'm listening, but I know that's going to be gone the second I finish watching this movie from my mind. So, yeah, the songs in here aren't very good, is what I'm saying. Hellfire is definitely the best one, and it's a great, great villain song, but the rest of them are kind of just and more drag the story than actually letting it develop. Then we have a pretty long cast here, so let's talk about it. First up, we have Tom Hulce. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tom Hulce as Quasimodo. He's great. Demi Moore. Yes, that Demi Moore as Esmeralda is great. And Heidi Mollenhauer is Esmeralda's singing voice is really good. Tony Jay is amazing as Frollo, arguably the best part of the movie. Kevin Kline as Phoebus is pretty good. Paul Candle as Clopin's pretty good. Jason Alexander, Charles Kimbrough, and Marie Wicks as Victor, Hugo, and Laverne are annoying, but their performances are fine. David Ogden Stiers is back, and this time he's the voice of the Deacon. Frank Welker's back, he's the voice of the Jolly. Mary Kay Bergman's back as Quasimodo's mother. Roger Bumpus, yes, Squidward, is the voice of one of the guards. Corey Burton is the voice of Miller. Jennifer Darling is the voice of the woman. Well, a woman. Debbie Derryberry, yes, Jimmy Neutron. They are definitely getting some Nickelodeon people in here. Debbie Derryberry, Jimmy Neutron himself, is the voice of the mother and the boy in the crowd. And speaking of SpongeBob, we also have Bill Fagerbaki in here as the Oafish guard. Yes, Patrick is the voice of another Oafish character. I'm smelling a typecasting, but he does a really good job. Mona Marshall as a woman is good. Mickey McGowan as peasant woman is good. Denise Pickering as the little girl is good. Patrick Penny as the guards and Quasimodo's father is okay. He doesn't really get to do much. Phil Proctor as the guards and the Paris citizens is okay. Jan Rabson as the various citizens is okay. Peter Samuel as the chorus is fine. Kat Sauchi as woman is good. It's Kat Sauchi. It's something we should always expect. But again, it's a very much a background role. She doesn't really get to do much. And then Mary Stout as the singing voice of Laverne is really good. So, yeah, the voice cast is still really good in here too. I just wish that the gargoyles weren't so annoying. But that's nothing against the actors. They did a decent job with their performance, and they were overall fine. But The characters just sucked. And sometimes that's just is how it is. And then there are a lot of additional voices in here, so I'm just going to run down the list. Jack Angle, Joan Barber, Scott Barnes, Susan Blue, Maurice LaMarche. That name should sound familiar. Carlos Alazraki, yes, Rocco. Mona Marshall, Maureen Brennan, Victoria Clark, Rick May, Jeff Bennett, John Kassir, Joe Alasky, Danny Mann, John Sagan, Phil Clark, Jonathan Dokuchitz? Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Bill Farmer, Laurie Fosso, Merwin Ford, Jim Ward, Greg Berger, Jess Harnell, Dana Hill, Colleen O'Shaughnessy, yes, the voice of our favorite fun two-tailed fox is in this movie. Kevin Michael Richardson, Judy Kay, Peter Cullen, yes, the voice of Optimus Prime. Scott Menville, Eddie Kobrick, Alex Corey, Michael Lindsay, Sherry Lynn, Howard McGillen, Anna McNeely, Roger Bumpus again, Bruce Moore, Gordon Staley, and Marcelo Tubert? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So, yeah, pretty big cast, some pretty memorable, pretty recognizable names in there. Unfortunately, most of them are in the side roles, which is a bummer, but they still all do a great job. Excuse me, allergies. And then, of course, there are a bunch of differences from the book, as this was based off the same Victor Hugo novel that was the inspiration for the original Hunchback in Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, if you prefer, which I believe is from 1920, that starred Lon Chaney as Quasimodo, and he showed off some really cool acrobatic skills. I hope I can review that movie someday. I've always been curious about it. And then, of course, there's obviously a bunch of changes from the book. The biggest one is that the freaking annoying talking gargoyles were not in the book, which means that they were a original idea that was added in here from Disney. And it's one of their worst ideas. Like, woof. Adding comedic gargoyles to a story that's supposed to be dark, adult, and intense was a really stupid move. This was also around the time that Jeffrey Katzenberg left Disney. And the critical response section is really long. You know what, screw it. I'm not doing written reviews for these, so I'll just go ahead and read it off. Here's the critical response to this movie, and then I'll tell you about my personal thoughts about this movie. Review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes gave the film a 73% positivity rating out of 51 reviews, with its consensus stating, Disney's take on the Victor Hugo classic is dramatically uneven, but strong visuals, dark themes, and message of tolerance make for a more sophisticated than average kids film. Chicago Sun-Times film critic Roger Ebert rewarded the film 4 stars, calling it the best Disney animated feature since Beauty and the Beast. A whirling, uplifting, thrilling story with a heart-touching message that emerges from the comedy and song. In his written review for the Chicago Tribune, his partner Gene Siskel, Siskel and Ebert, awarded the film 3.5 out of a possible 4 stars, describing the film as a surprisingly emotional, simplified version of the novel, with effective songs and, yes, tasteful bits of humor. Sorry, Mr. Siskel, but you're wrong. The humor in this movie's bad. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly graded the film an A in his review, labeled it the best of Disney's serious animated features in the multiplex era, an emotionally rounded fairy tale that balances darkness and sentimentality, pathos and triumph with uncanny grace. Richard Corliss of Time praised the film, giving a positive review stating that the result is a grand cartoon cathedral teeming with gargoyles and treachery, hopeless love, and tortured lust. And also said Alan Menken and Steven Schwartz had written the largest, most imposing score yet for an animated movie. Charles Spencer of the Daily Telegraph gave it a positive review, saying it is thrillingly dramatic, and for long stretches you forget you are watching a cartoon at all, a dazzling treat. Variety also gave the film a positive review, stating that there is much to admire in Hunchback, not least the risk in doing such a downer of a story at all, and also saying the new film should further secure Disney's dominance in animation, and connoisseurs of the genre, old and young, will have plenty to savor. Also addressing the film's darker themes, the Daily Mail called The Hunchback of Notre Dame Disney's darkest picture, with a pervading atmosphere of racial tension, religious bigotry, and mob hysteria, and the best version yet of Hugo's novel, a cartoon masterpiece, and one of the great movie musicals. Janet Maslin wrote in her New York Times review, in a film that bears conspicuous ego resemblances to other recent Disney hits, the filmmaker's Herculean work is overshadowed by a Sisyphean problem. There's just no way to delight children with a feel-good version of this story. Upon opening in France in March 1997, reception from French critics towards Hunchback was reported to be glowing or largely positive. French critics and audiences even found resonance in the film when it mirrored a real-life incident from August 1995 where French police stormed a Parisian church and took away more than 200 illegal immigrants who were seeking sanctuary. It is difficult not to think of the undocumented immigrants of St. Bernard when Frollo tries to sweep out the rabble, wrote one reviewer. So let's see. The movie was nominated for a Best Original Score Oscar, but it lost against some movie called Emma. Never heard of it. It was also nominated for that same thing in the Golden Globes, but it lost to The English Patient. And then it was also nominated for Best Family Feature Film by the Young Artist Awards in animation. It was nominated, but lost against James and the Giant Peach? Really? That's a weird one to lose to. The film currently stands with a 73% fresh rating on RottenTomatoes.com with a 60% fresh rating by established critics, the cream of the crop. So, yeah. That's pretty much the entire movie. That's the basic gist of it. That's the whole plot, that's the voice cast, that's its reception, and that's the stuff it was nominated for. So what did I personally think of Hunchback of Notre Dame, having just watched it for the first time and having never actually seen it before until now, outside of bits and pieces? It is a really good Disney movie, absolutely, and I give Disney a lot of props for being this willing to be this mature and dark and make such an intense movie, but at the same time, they made some baffling decisions that definitely hampered the experience. The gargoyles are the worst part of it, by far. They're unfunny, they're not from the book, and they have no purpose being here whatsoever outside of very forced, very bad comedic relief. In a story that didn't freaking need it. And then the rest of the music is, like I said, it's fine, but outside of the orchestral scores, I don't really remember much of it, and Hellfire, of course. And then it also has some pacing issues in the second half, and the love triangle thing just goes on for way too long. But put all that aside, it still has great animation, great voice acting, a great adaptation of some really good source material, great themes, a nice adult, dark, mature edge, which, again, is rare for Disney to do nowadays, because they're too freaking scared outside of Pixar to even attempt doing something that adult anymore, which is sad, but we'll talk more about that when we get to the more recent ones. And Frollo is an incredible villain, not to mention the characters are still great here, and it's just a really entertaining movie, even with its numerous problems. But because of those numerous problems, I can't be one of those people that calls it great. It has its great moments. I love all the dark adult stuff in this movie, but it has way too many aspects that just feel either out of place or just don't work. And once again, the gargoyles are the worst part of the entire movie by a mile. But take all that away, what are you left with? You're left with a really strong Disney movie that sadly, in my opinion, just falls short of greatness. And because of that, I'm going to give Hunchback of Notre Dame a final verdict of a probably a bit controversial, but screw it, it's my opinion, 7 out of 10. It's about on the same level as Pocahontas, and it suffers from different problems. With Pocahontas, the problem was, it did have pacing issues, but it was also the cheap animation. Whereas with this one has amazing animation, but suffers from throwing in things that weren't in the book that didn't even need to be here and feel completely out of place and are nothing more than annoying distractions. So take your pick. Both have their problems, but both are really good movies. So don't think that just because I said a lot of negatives about this movie that I think it's a bad movie. No, I do really like and enjoy this movie and I do recommend it. But those calling it like the greatest animated movie ever made or one of Disney's greatest ever, yeah, I'm sorry. You need a wake-up call, man. It is not that good. It is very good, not great. Alright, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you guys have been enjoying these longer reviews, as I'm going to try to keep these going. And which one's next? Let me grab my handy-dandy binder, and we'll find out together, shall we? Let's see. Which one's next? Ooh. I might lose some people with this opinion. Next up is another one from my childhood that I do have connection with and that I still love no matter how many critics bash it. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you all about tomorrow when we talk about Hercules.